Day number 3 of the director's cut of our WrestleMania 35 vlog, looking back some 6 years later at each and every day of my WrestleMania 35 week. What is up, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watchalong Wrestling, and I am a wrestling content creator from Long Island, New York. So great to be back here with each and every one of you. And today, we're going to get to day 3 of this vlog. It is the Thursday of WrestleMania 35 week, and it might go down as one of my favorite days ever on a wrestling trip that involved all wrestling. This is like your quintessential, in my opinion, your quintessential day that you want if you're going to be a wrestling fan. And I remember this day initially taking a look at this Thursday because this is really, I think, at the pinnacle of WrestleMania week, where all the other independents are involved, all the other different types of I guess, for lack of a better term, companies are involved. And I remember this day starting at like 12 noon with Evolve Wrestling and then going through the entire day. Now, I didn't do all of that. I still went to work. I remember I had taken off for WrestleMania week because of the idea that, obviously, with WrestleMania week coming to town, I would need a couple days off. I took off Friday. I took off Monday. So Thursday, I still was at work. And I remember leaving work, and then that's kind of where this picks up. And we went to, one of the things we wanted to do, since it was going to be a local WrestleMania, was get out to an independent wrestling show. At the time, my wife was a big fan of Jimmy Havoc because she's a huge AFI fan, so loved the idea that you had Jimmy Havoc, kind of like Davey Havoc, lead singer of AFI. Obviously, I know Jimmy Havoc has done some things that are unsavory, and that was well before those came about here in 2019. And the main event of this show for TNA, which was a TNA pay-per-view, was going to be Penta and Phoenix. That's right, Penta, the guy who's currently on WWE TV, Zero Medio, and Phoenix going up against the team of Rob Van Dam and Sabu, a total dream match. So that show we knew was going to be coming about, and it didn't start until 10 p.m. So that allowed us enough time to squeeze in WWE Axxess with the same friend that I had gone to go see Mick Foley with. So we went to Axxess before all of that. It's a lot of running around. I'll recap it in the end, but let's get right into the director's cut and rewatch this together. I'm excited. Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so here we go, and you can see here, this is Ace Austin in the scramble match for the X division. And day 3, it was actually, it says Wednesday. It is actually day 3 Thursday. I think I made an error there. So day 3 on Thursday, and there I am in one of the coolest Bret Hart shirts. I don't know what happened to this shirt. I hope I didn't sell it. It is an awesome shirt, though. And I remember meeting Natty Neidhart and her just loving this shirt and getting a big kick out of it. So that was awesome that I was able to do. And I'm kind of breaking down the day here. I had just traveled back. I had obviously worked in the time in Brooklyn, New York. I traveled back to Queens, New York to pick up my buddy who lived out in Queens, and then met up with my wife and her brother, and we were all going to WWE Axxess. And Axxess, you can see us walking to Axxess here. Axxess was held at the Brooklyn Pier in Brooklyn, New York. And this was a strange location, but I actually loved it. I thought it was very cool, and you can see all the people driving in to go park. I think like parking was like $25. But knowing Brooklyn pretty well, I knew you could just park like on any of the side streets and you'd be fine. You could do parking for free. So we parked over there, and now here we are walking into the Brooklyn Pier. And again, a strange location because the Javits Center exists. That's where they do like Fanatics Fest now, and the car show, and a lot of big types of different types of, I guess, conventions. So I would have loved for it to be in Manhattan, but I thought having it in Brooklyn was actually kind of cool, and it was such a unique setup from what they normally would have. I'm breaking down here. Remember, the big thing about wanting to get to this Axxess. I love going to the Thursday Axxess. I think that's when you should always go. It gives you something to kind of sink your teeth into and get you really ready for your WrestleMania weekend trip. And also for me, one of the big things that I always like to look into and think about is the idea that not only are you going to Axxess and you're getting out there a little bit early, but normally they have the bigger stars. So I know for this one, Aleister Black was one of them my wife wanted to see. You also had Baron Corbin. You can see they had a separate entrance for the Superstore and then Axxess where you'd have to show your tickets to get into. And I remember this particular Axxess, I knew we were going to go on Monday because it was the first time they were doing Axxess on Monday. So this was almost like a bonus Axxess. And my buddy I had mentioned had a disability. And at the time, and I just love this scene here as we're walking into Axxess because it's such a hype scene. And you could see they had like this, I remember this screen here to the left where they were hyping up some of the matches. And there they are talking about Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns. And I remember just being like really pumped up to like, you see the entrance to Axxess as you're walking in and you know everything's going to be here. And now just kind of that big bird's eye view of everything going on. But I remember one of the big things, my buddy has a disability, and the disability line had become a problem at Axxess. A lot of people would just go on the line if they didn't have any disability, if they weren't with anyone with a disability. And so for me, we went with my friend, and they had started to actually monitor this pretty well. You had to go get like a band to get onto the disability line, and then they also allowed you to bring 3 people with you. So they didn't want like a whole line of like 30 people going for each person, but it was 3 people for each line, and that's what we did. And so with my buddy, the 4 of us were able to get into the front of every single photo line, every single autograph line. It was an amazing experience for him, but also for us. We got to meet like 20 different people that night. You can see Akira Tozawa, Alexa Bliss, the Brian Kendrick, and there I am showing off Rob Schamberger doing some artwork. But some of the things you saw earlier, it's such a good way to kind of kick off the WrestleMania weekend. Like, they just unveiled the Roddy Piper statue to begin there. You saw the New Age Outlaws out there signing. And here I am with some photos of Sanjay Dutt. And I remember having a really great conversation with him. This one here I really like because it has, you obviously have this entrance ramp. I went to FanFest for WrestleMania 10, and this entire setup was exactly like this, with the same standees: Yokozuna, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, Lex Luger. And so it's so cool to see that as a throwback. And that's my favorite part of Axxess, is going and seeing all the artifacts, doing all the little exhibits. Meeting the wrestlers is cool, but for me, that's really what it's all about, is getting a chance to see those. And they've recaptured that more recently with the WWE World stuff. This is the Worlds Collide tournament, where they had wrestlers from NXT, NXT UK, and WWE proper having matches throughout the weekend at Axxess. And then they'd actually put that, as my wife is dancing, I think, to, I want to say it was Randy Orton's music. And then they'd have all of those wrestlers pretty much put their entire, they'd have those matches and stream them on the WWE Network. So you'd almost be able to see like a WWE Network special here at Axxess, which I thought was really cool. And you can see the way they had this set up. They had the Axxess Arena in a separate place where you'd have to kind of walk out of the building where Axxess proper was, onto the pier, and then walk around into another room. Again, unique venue, but I thought honestly a lot of fun. And they had different rooms there. So you can see here was like the main floor with all the autographs. Then they had like the Mania of WrestleMania room, which was set up and actually had a ring, the entire replica ring from WrestleMania 1, which you'll briefly see here at the end when we're leaving. And then you had obviously the Axxess Arena, which is where they were having all the big matches, and they had an entire small arena set up of things that were going on. They don't have, I don't believe they do that at WWE World anymore, have those like live matches going on. They have like the ring set up, but I didn't see any matches going on last year. I do think that's a cool little thing, like if you want to check those out as you're walking by. But at this event, there were so many big names coming in from independent scene, and I remember Luke Harper putting a thing on, the late great Luke Harper putting a thing online to have everybody kind of recognize that this was his WrestleMania and he was going to give it his all. And he got a match with Dijak that was really good. And so people would go to this, pay your $50 to go to Axxess, and just sit in that Axxess Arena and watch live wrestling for 4 hours and get a good show out of it. So this one here, we were in line to kind of see Shelton Benjamin and Samoa Joe, and we were a little too late. I think Mike Kanellis and Maria Kanellis were on this table as well. They'd redone all of the different pieces of Axxess to where the table included like 4 autographs as opposed to 1. And then they also had the photo ops, where each one of the different photo op rooms had different pictures you can go and take with the different wrestlers. And each one of those photo rooms had like 3 or 4 different photos. So you saw earlier, it was Akira Tozawa, Alexa Bliss, and different pieces in there. But for this particular autograph table, it was Mike Kanellis, Mary Kanellis, Samoa Joe, Shelton Benjamin, and they were being replaced by Ivory, Jacqueline, Heavy Machinery, and then a completely unadvertised and surprise returning Sami Zayn. And at the time, he was on my wife's short list of wrestlers she wanted to meet. And we had met, I believe it was Aleister Black in the beginning of the time there and a lot of different things going on. And so I think we did see Aleister Black earlier in the day, but I remember she was bummed about missing Corbin, but this made up for it. She was so excited to see Sami Zayn and to see him be a part of this autograph signing. We had kind of seen him, because of where we are on that disability line, we had seen him backstage. We weren't sure he was going to be a part of the autograph signing, and then they kind of teased that he was going to be added to this. You think about that. Sami Zayn is a VIP, very hard to get on there, and had been out of action for a while. So there he is. People going nuts for him. People so excited. My wife was pumped. Her brother was excited. My buddy was pumped up as well. And this was just complete luck that we were able to meet all of them. And look at Otis I remember meeting Otis. He was like, give me a hand, brother. I want to feel the power of you, my brother. And so it was really cool. Otis is like 27 there. Crazy. Good to meet Jacqueline and Ivory. And I remember I asked Sami Zayn, I said, Sammy, are you going to be, when are you coming back? And he's like, I've had some setbacks with my shoulder injury because shoulders are so wonky, but hopefully sometime soon. And then he showed up on Monday night and returned then. You can see there, Chad Gable. Look at the long hair for Gable with Bobby Roode. They were an underrated team. This is the type of artifacts I'm talking about. I love this. The DX, obviously the DX Army tank. They had that on display with a huge homage to DX. I remember they did this big entire Braun Strowman just destroying a car specifically because they were bringing out a brand new Braun Strowman destructible car toy. And so that was, I think, the entire reason behind it. I think that is Alexa Bliss there, or I don't know who that was, but there's Mickie James and these guys, the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson. Listen, I like the Good Brothers. I think that for a time they were a fun act, and I was disappointed in meeting them because, again, this is Thursday afternoon, right? They've just gotten to town. Monday afternoon, I understand. You're going to get people who are pretty pooped. These guys just got to town. First event is this Axxess, and they never acknowledged us. You'd turn around, they'd be in full conversation. They threw up their too sweet for a photo, continue their conversation about getting groceries, where to go shopping, and I thought that was pretty disappointing. You can see the Superstore here. I never get a Superstore video. I don't know why I didn't go through a full tour here. I know we're in a rush here, but on Monday, I absolutely should have gotten a Superstore tour, and I never get that Superstore tour. Let me make something clear now. If this was 2025, Tommy on the spot, not 2019, Tommy on the spot, I would have been at that Superstore at the beginning of the day, out my lunch break from work in Brooklyn, and done a cool Superstore tour for everyone and put that up separate. Not anymore. Here in 2019, I wasn't even thinking about it. Here we are, we're exiting frantically because we are in the process of going to New Jersey. Remember, the TNA show we're heading to is in New Jersey. And so I'm kind of setting the scene that we have to now get back to Queens from Brooklyn, drop off my buddy, because he lived in Queens, and it was going to be way too late for him to be out till, 1, 2 in the morning, and then get out to TNA out in New Jersey. And my wife did this full drive, which was incredible, and I think a lot of the reason for it was her brother. Her brother at the time, still 18 years old, and so still, a kid, and we always tried to do the best for him. And it was always just so cool to see him really pumped up to go see places. My wife is jumping up and down doing the Jimmy fucking Havoc, which was Jimmy Havoc's big kind of chant and the thing that people would get into him. And he was a big name. You think about it when AEW rolls around. Joey Janela and Jimmy Havoc were like two of the big guys from the indies to be a part of those first few shows. Here we are stopping at a Wendy's, and I think we had to grab a quick bite before we had to get out to New Jersey. And we had left Axxess. I think we got to Axxess right as it opened at 6, and we left Axxess around 9 o'clock. And it was, we were able to still get everything in there and still get to TNA right as it started. And you see this clip here of Ace Austin, which was kind of one of the cooler things I'd seen. And I hadn't been to an indie show in so many years, but I remember going to my first indie shows in the early 2000s, and like these types of spots would happen all the time where it's just like, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? Like doing all of these insane moves. And so getting out there and seeing that for the first time was the first time it really felt like being able to see an indie show at the first time. This match here, two scumbags in the ring. But presenting this in real time with the uninterrupted vlogs that I'll be talking through. So you see that clip there, Tessa Blanchard. And now, look at the aura in this ring. RVD and Sabu, against the Lucha Brothers, and I remember they were dueling chants. RVD came out to his great TNA music that Raw Band Damn, whole effing show. And then you also had the dueling chant of Zero Meadow, and people just doing that whole deal. It was amazing. It's just so incredible to see. And I remember this match is just all the high spots, maybe 10 minutes tops. But it's all you really wanted. It's all you needed at the time. And this was like the perfect way to start out. Look, me doing the most ridiculous reaction cam ever with me doing that. And then running back to jump in the car because it was close to 2 a.m. I remember the show went about 3.5 to 4 hours. And at the end, people were like disappointed that wrestlers weren't out there doing signings and they weren't able to meet anybody, do meet and greets, anything to that extent. It was such a fun time just going from place to place, and in real life, you're not going to do that. You're going to go to a wrestling show, you're going to go home afterwards. And here we are, 9 o'clock, jumping in the car, 10 o'clock at night, driving out to New Jersey, getting there to a wrestling show, and taking it all in. And yeah, I remember my brother-in-law in particular being like, oh, we could have gone to like 2-3 shows during the day if we had done that. And it would have been cool to do even more, but I think this was certainly more than enough. And the next day, on Friday, my wife and I had this plan to spend the entire day together in New York City. Didn't quite happen. But we'll save that story for tomorrow. Until next time, everybody, this has been Tommy on the Spot. I'll catch y'all in the next video.